That was a perfectly good rant, and I really appreciate the perspective. I just don't look at things that way. I look at them from my seat, and it's just a little bit different. So 2% of people have coaches, but there's millions of coaches, I feel like, out there. What is the deal? What is your perspective? You clearly know what you're doing, have had success, but what about the people that, for lack of a better phrase, bring the talent down because they do coaching as a side gig and they suck and they charge $100 an hour?
So there's a whole mix-up in coaching right now, and I know even in the last 3 months I've had so many people reach out and say, I've decided I want to be a coach. And sort of like everyone wants to be a coach now. It's
like clients?
Like not necessarily my clients, but I actually have had one of my clients become a coach, and she's excellent. And went to NYU, and she's like just super gifted at it, and has got and I refer her a bunch of business now. But I, you know, a lot of other people are just like sort of like, I've decided I want to help people. I want to be a coach, and some people probably could be great coaches, right? But one, although the coaching market is growing, I think it's growing like 20% sort of, you know, per year, which is huge. There's still, it's a small market and a fixed sort of market. And you're seeing sort of the bastardization of coaching. Like we were talking to a company that's using our software recently, and they were like going to do these like 3 packs of coaching with different people, which is not coaching, right? Like you had coaching sessions, but it's like, it's not a punch card, right? This isn't, it's not lattes or acupuncture or whatever. Like it's, you know, coaching is, from my perspective, it's a, you know, sort of a, you know, longitudinal, you know, time-based relationship. And with any behavior change, it takes time. So, you know, a lot of employees, you kind of cheat them because they think, I'm going to sit with someone, they're going to tell me the answer, they're going to give me a plan, I'm going to go do it, which is not how careers happen, not how behavior change happens. And so now I see coaches online and a lot of online platforms where it's like, you can talk to someone, buy a session, buy a thing. And if that's a way to like get started and get them into a longer relationship, I understand that and how people sort of try before they buy and whatever. But that seems to be more like, oh, I have a coach. And then you're like, yeah, I meet with them twice a year or something. And I'm like, it's not really a coach. Maybe that's like an advisor or a mentor. But like coaching is like, Serena Williams has a coach and she's not on the tennis court a day a year, right? And that's the reason she's a dominant star, right? Is because she gets a lot of coaching, right? And so so when I see like this flood of people, and also it's kind of the new outplacement, I've been told, as a lot of people are saying, oh, I was a VP of treasury at a company, so now I'm going to be a coach for people in finance. But what they were probably a damn good VP of treasury, but they're a piss poor coach. In particular, if they don't get education or have the natural kind of aptitudes, or oftentimes they've never even had a coach themselves, right? That's something that definitely to be suspect is, a lot of people don't ask that, but you should ask a coach if they had a coach, because if they hadn't, like, next.
I've said psychologists have psychologists that they talk to.
And there's a special group of psychologists that help psychologists, because that's like the extra strength. They're like really, you know, and the coaches that help coaches are also the same way, right?
I believe in that. Like, you have to be a practitioner as well, right? Like you need to be able to receive it. And that's a really, really good point that I think is very overlooked. And that's a good tip for a lot of people who look into it. Now, I know you're in the middle of something, but tell me why you think it's only 2%. Like, it took me a while. And I'm like, the investment is worth it. And the person that my wife and I have, I mean, he's fantastic, but it took forever. Now, clearly, there's a money factor. Like, oh, wow, that's pretty high dollar. And it's just kind of a lifelong contract type thing, which is fine. We're okay with it. But why is it 2%? And why do people suck up their pride and not want the help?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Even the 2% that get it, if you talk to coaches who work with larger companies, whether it's paid for by the company and things, in my experience and the experience of a lot of other coaches, that like the flake rate on like people not showing up to a session, having to leave a half hour early, not doing their work, needing to reschedule a ton of times is very high. So even the people that get coaching aren't necessarily always using coaching. So the actual percentage of people actually being coached effectively is probably less than 2, right? And so first, structural is money. It's expensive, right? So if you think about like that $500 an hour, according to Harvard Business School, that's the median cost of an executive coach in America. And that was as of like 3 years ago, so it's probably gone up, right? And you know, you don't buy an hour from a coach. A good coach is going to say, hey, it's going to be 20 sessions, right? So then it's 10 grand, right? And then that's the commitment up front. Well, that's a lot of money. So first there's the economic hurdle, right? Second is coaching is delivered in a method that's sort of antiquated in the fact that it's, someone you're talking to me on, and now like it's innovative because it's like over video and you can video call. Well, sure, like, and I've coached people over video too, and that's fine, but it's still the same thing, which is basically it's an hour of time, you're face to face or video to video, but it's banker's hours. I don't coach people at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. I don't coach people on Saturday afternoons, right? And most, top tier sort of executive coaches work banker's hours. The best coaches don't work on those other hours typically. Some people have different lifestyle constructs and they like doing that, or that works for them, and that's awesome. I think that's a market opportunity for certain people. Yeah. But, so you coach during these rigid times that are high opportunity cost times, because for a high performer, banker's hours are times that you're selling, you're coding, you're interviewing, you're delivering, you're leading, you're financing, whatever the thing you do is, you're having to take away time to go get coaching to do that. And you're forcing them the context switch in the middle of the day. In context switching, each time you go from one thing to another, it takes 25 minutes for your brain to reset. Part of the reason people are exhausted is they're just going from ping to ping to ping, and they never get into flow, right? Wow. If you talk about authors that ever write a book and they're effective, there are no alerts, the phone is down, no one can interrupt them, they just do one thing, right? And that's how you beast out a book. Wow. Or that's how great programmers code, right? It's how great video editors go through things, That's how great artists get paintings made, And they monotask, they do one thing. Well, coaching has you in the middle of the day, you're having to, context switch. And the third thing is it's often too much medicine for the patient. Now, you and your wife, you have a military background, you served our country, you're doing something now totally different. This is not what you did in the military,
no.
Right? Like, you're using different equipment, yes. Right? And there's different asset management and different things like that, and you're thinking in a totally different paradigm, right? And so, and you're managing a business, and you're, partnering with this WeWork thing, and you got these other ideas, and so you have a lot of complexity to handle, and a lot of things that I would say are sort of like unstructured and ambiguous. Yeah. So a individual coach is going to be better for you, right? Because you have a lot of, but the average employee doesn't have that. The average employee has a job, and they have a pretty common kind of 80-20 set of issues and challenges and opportunities. And so like with my company, the reason we're able to do it through software is our software can't solve for every permutation that you have. You would not be our customer, yeah. Right? Our software is for when MetLife is our biggest customer. And they've got, sales, brokers, and they've got people in leadership and people in their learning function and marketing, others, Aon or CBS or Thomson Reuters, Pandora Radio, all these companies we work with. And they have great, stunning, amazing people that do very meaningful work. Yeah. But what they really need to manage are some pretty common things, yeah. Right? They need to manage how they use their time. They need to manage what their unmet needs were. You talked about unmet needs earlier. They need to identify what those are and do something about it. They need to manage their relationship with their manager and to make them successful, treat them like a customer, and own their supervision, yep. And manage up, and lean into their preferences and style, and have empathy for them as a person. They need to be effective at solving problems. Almost every job today is a problem-solving job, and no one is taught how to solve problems effectively. Generally, the STEM industries and academic disciplines teach you a very structured way. It can be extremely amazing. But outside of that, often not. Military does a pretty good job of solving problems because of the situational adaptation, given the kind of dynamic environments that our service members are in. And then you think about, like, how do you actually interact on a team, and what's your role, and how do you disclose that and come up with that, or how do you use technology to manage relationships? Like, no one's talking about that's in our coaching product, but like that's the thing that everyone's deals. Feedback is on every engagement survey. I want more feedback. Well, here's the problem. People expect feedback to land on their desk. They expect it to come from their manager. They expect it to be part of a formal system, and then they confuse it with critical developmental feedback, affirmation and recognition, or confirmation of status. And those are three different things. If you're looking for affirmation and someone gives you critical feedback, you're going to be really upset. Yeah. And so, and thinking about their career as a portfolio and other things they can do inside and outside of their firm, right? In the community, right? In their association, industries, whatever it may be, functions. And so that's where we look at the approach and say, for coaching, most people will go to a coach, and that's why maybe 2 or 3 sessions is fine, because they just want to talk about a couple things and that's it. But sometimes you have people do what I call they reach for their dessert and not their vegetables, right? And what they want to talk about isn't what they necessarily need to talk about, right? And that's why a good coach, if you go to Barry's boot camp or do something else, they're not like, hey, what would you like to work on today? They're like, get down and do push-ups, right? And do people want to do triceps? No one really likes triceps.
I told my coach I was going to choke him through the phone once. Yeah. This is like after knowing him for a month. Yeah. He goes, I don't care. He goes, that's dirty toilet water or something. And I was like, what? And I know, it was kind of crazy. I mean, he's been in the game for a long time. And he's like, you don't understand. That's not giving you immediate value. And
totally.
And I was like, okay. And then I calmed down and we talked. But I mean, you're exactly right. I want to ask another question though. So the 2% is probably less and whatever. The flakes. So in your situation, because you have a software, and flake rate is amazing. I love that you said that. That's hilarious. I have a pretty bad flake rate with things myself. I'm just like, I don't have time for the call. But anyway, so because you have software associated, are you able to avoid these kinds of things? And it's just a better, I really believe customer experience is always number one, but like your experience has to be good too. So when those people get those calls like, hey, I didn't do this, or I got to cancel, it's just like you're less invested in the relationship. So did that play any part into the software?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we look at is a measure the efficacy of our software is participation and engagement with it. Yeah. So, the thing about the gym is if you go, it works. And having a gym membership isn't enough. You actually have to get your ass to the gym. Mm-hmm. So coaching is the same way. Hiring a coach. That's what I had to screen early on in my coaching practice. I would get clients that would buy coaching and not use it. Yeah. And not use it like either not show up or not be coachable.
How do you not take that personally?
So I had to my bigger thing was how do I screen that person out? And I had some clients that I had to fire, and then I screen ahead of it rather than me have to deal with it emotionally. It's like, this isn't what I'm up for. Like, if I was a surgeon, I wouldn't walk into an operating room and have people like, I don't want surgery. I'd be like, screw you, let's not have people in the operating room that don't want to have surgery, right? Like, this is what I do, right? If you don't want that, that's fine, but this is what I do. So when you talk about behavior change and you talk about sort of a psychological contract, there's a variety of things we do on our software to make it effective and have people actually use it. And if you look at completion rates of online courses,
it's very low.
Less than 1%. And if you look at talent development programs online, the completion rate is more like 5 to 8% total. And our completion rate is about 80% over a 52-week program. Now, how do we get that? First of all, we have an advantage of pre-selecting. Employees don't give our product to their worst people.
Yes.
They invest in their best, which is rare because a lot of times, the worst employees get the most attention and the most money and the most whatever. Yep. And we say, hey, if you're picking stocks, don't pick losers, pick winners, right? Let them fall off the vine, the bad ones. Focus on the winners, right? Because, a high performer can have 10x performance of a low performer. And so first we have a predisposed group of people that then we psychologically contract with them. Here's what we're expecting. Are you opting into this? Here's what you're going to get out of it, because most talent programs that are sold and things are sold in HR are marketed to the person buying them and writing the check, not the person using them. Yes. So we actually started as a direct-to-consumer company, and so that's the brand stuff. That's all the other things. So when we design something in our product, it has to be equally compelling to the buyer and the member, or an end user. We call it member. We hate the term user. So buyer and member. And so it's like, do they care and do they care? Yep. So it's like relevant things where there's a clear what's in it for me, a WIFM for both parties, right? Then we take, if you think of change management and you think people are at point A and you want to get them to point B, well, the first thing you do is you assume good intent and you take all the barriers out of the way, the things that would get in the way. So that's friction. So friction is what? Is it on mobile? No, friction. Do I have to be on VPN? Friction. Is it buried 18 clicks into the intranet? Friction. Do I don't know what my password is? Friction. So our product is a frictionless product. People use it on any device, no software installed, doesn't matter what operating system, through text message and email, no credentials to log in, works anytime, works anywhere, right? Yeah. So we take the barriers out of the way, and we hold people accountable. So if they don't do it, we let them know that we're watching them. So the Hawthorne effect, right, says just merely by people knowing their performance is being observed, it increases the performance. So there's a study in 1940s of, if they change the lighting in a factory, if people would be more productive, and just by having people with clipboards watching them, performance goes up, right? So they know that we're watching them, right? And our team texts them, emails them, and calls them on a weekly basis. If they're behind, and we have incentives to get caught back up, and we're trying to get power. And this is not something we've completely figured out by any means. This is a growing experiment because I want to get that 80% number. One, I want to sustain that number as we grow because it could actually degrade, and I want to increase that number, right? And so then as part of that commitment, and then the other thing is like, we just really sell them on the excitement of how special it is to be invested in. Employees are always bitching about not having enough development and their companies don't care for them and all that. And then they get us, okay, here's the thing. Your company has actually heard you and they're doing something about it. Take advantage of it. And we make them feel guilty if they don't, right? And we start with, and we also make it fun. The first thing you do with a pilot is we make a playlist and we text everyone. We say, hey, what's your work jam? What's the song that gets you jacked up and gets you to get all this work done? And people go nuts and they're like blasting back all, and it's like everything from like super explicit songs, we have to find a non-explicit version, to like Taylor Swift or something in between, and I'm like, and so, but it's whatever it is, right? And it's part of diversity and self-expression. And we put together a Spotify playlist for that cohort. And that's the first thing. So we add just a little levity and fun where they're like, oh, this isn't gonna suck, or this is like kind of refreshing or kind of fun. And and we get into, again, those practical sort of things. But that's where I look at it as our job. We're fundamentally, we may be an HR technology company, it's a coaching product, but fundamentally, if you were to say like, fundamentally, what are we doing? It's behavior change. So it's in service of maximizing potential. Traditional talent matrix is performance and potential when you evaluate talent. Everything in the market's performance. It's all about performance. Most of it, by the way, doesn't work very well, and employees and managers hate it. But nothing's in the potential space. So we're on the potential axis, right? I think it has a performance impact as a secondary impact, but ultimately it's to change behavior. Well, if people don't go to the gym, they don't get the results. So we actually, rather than just say, well, the people that show up, they're gonna get a great workout, we actually look at it as our responsibility to get them to the gym and to have them have a great workout. And if you look at people in like public health and that do case management and people that are in education and helping underserved communities and marginalized populations, they look at the same way. They take a sense of total responsibility and wrap around the needs of that client or that patient completely, right? So you may be managing, let's say, HIV in the community, right? And you think, oh, let's get them the medication to manage their HIV and the thing. But maybe what they need is actually the bus ticket, and the bus pass to get to the doctor's office, to do the blood work, right? Or maybe they need someone to give the medication every day because they don't have stable housing. And they don't even have a place to keep the medication, right? Or they're chemically dependent and they might sell it on the black market on the street. So you have to look at it in these sort of like non-logical but highly humanistic and related ways of like, what does that take? And so I would say that we are just getting started in figuring that out. I would say while we're industry leading, the bar is extremely low. On Net Promoter Score, the range of scores is -100 to 100, and it's answering the question, how likely would you be to recommend this product to a friend or colleague? And so a 0 is generally a good score, right? USAA, a bank I'm sure you're familiar with, is got one of the highest NPSs, and it's in the mid-60s because it's just like you said, like you'd recommend it, right?
Customer service is just it's awesome,
right?
I mean, they always just talk to me for a little bit. And
totally.
I was like,
They're human, right?
Like unbelievable. They have that nailed.
So they're in the 60s, right? And that's where they're at. The talent management average for talent management software is -57, okay? That's how bad the software is that's out there. We're consistently scoring about 80. So between 60 and 80. Now again, early on, a lot of excitement, so we gotta protect and keep that, right? But it's also that psyche is like they value it, right? It's something that they want and they appreciate. And we talked to a new customer yesterday and they were like, well, should we like require this or whatever? And I'm like, if something is compulsory, it sucks. I have to take out the trash, I have to floss, I have to pay my taxes. It sort of sucks. You still have to do all those things generally, but if something is compelling, you want to do it, and it's in a totally different part of your brain. So I said, let's not make it compulsory, let's make it compelling. Let's, though, have people opt in and commit, right? Rather than have it be compulsory, have it be a committed thing and say, by the way, if you do this, we expect you to do this. And if you don't, we may pull you out. And we use loss aversion is another way, because people are really motivated. Like they don't want to lose that thing, right? So they say, hey, like, you're behind, like, let's get you caught up or whatever. But by the way, if you're just gonna like ghost or check out, we'll pull you out of the coaching cohort. You'll lose the coaching.
Oh, got it. I'm just like hearing that. I would be like, no.
No, don't take that. That's what I want. I swear to God, I'll do it today. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to binge it. I'm going to do it all. And we have people do that, right?
Yeah.
And not as a threat, but just to say that there are consequences if you don't honor your word and meet your commitment. Yeah. And again, this is completely foreign to how most HR and talent programs are run. So the socialism of HR is everyone gets everything. There's no segmentation or gradation. Everyone's the same, which is just not true. Employees in a room know that some people are higher performers and harder working and more talented than others, right? And that's okay, right? A baseball team pays players differently,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? And so that's where we're trying to take some different approaches. And so when I share all this, we're in a place of learning. We figured some things out, but we have more to figure out than we figured out. Mm-hmm. Right?
I'm like just superbly impressed. This is far deep. Like I could tell you from being to a lot of talent management, HR conferences, panels, and everything. Like it doesn't get this deep and intentional. Sure. So I'm just finding myself not surprised by some of the scores. And the thing is, even though you say the average is negative 57 and you guys are in the 60s and 80s and it's still kind of new-ish or whatever, you're still the tip of the spear. And the way you operate, and I'm sure the rest of the company operates, like you are gonna just be like you are just gonna rush to try to get, not rush, but intentionally work towards 100 no matter what. Yeah. And while it may not happen, like sustaining is super relevant. And like just the Spotify playlist alone, when you said that, that's just like, okay. Like if someone did that for me, just as an individual, I'd be like, well, all right, like, thank you.
Or get your attention, or have you be curious, or be like, this is different, because again, the brain is a pattern recognition machine. The tiger is running at us, and it decides, is it going to kill me? Should I fight or flight? And the amygdala fires, right? Yeah. That's how the brain works. So the brain is a computer, and when you see the talent stuff that always sucked, and it's delivered in the same way that's always sucked, you assume this is going to suck too. So you have to interrupt the pattern and say, this is different, and it's going to be cool, and then you actually get the people to pay attention and be open. And if it's as simple as a freaking Spotify playlist, and we've got a ton of other things that we're doing around that, right? But like, that's these kind of inspired ideas. It's the, part of good design is truly at the root, it's thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
Right? It's less about the zhuzhing and the joie de vivre of all of it. Or that's not the term even. Let's rewind that. But the zhuzhing of it. It's really the thoughtfulness and saying like, where is this person sitting? What's their view of the world? What are they thinking and feeling and hearing and seeing and feeling? And what do they need? Right? And it's almost like a good person that gives a good speech starts from that place. Less of what they want to share and more about what the person in the audience needs.
Correct.
Right? And I think that's where we have so much to figure out and so much to learn, right? We're constantly experimenting. We get things wrong. We've had a lot of shifts in our company over the last few years, but it's exciting to be in the place of like, how do we be in service, right, of this and create ultimately beyond, right now we're positioned as a coaching company. It may be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, some period of time, we are a self-management layer that is over and with the employee. We are the sort of thing that helps keep people sort of straight in their pocket, right? Independent of their manager, if they're good or not, independent of their HR, performance management process or systems, which all can be additive in tailwinds, right? But that basically say like, let's create that entrepreneurial sense within a person, right? Yes. That has that sense of ownership, responsibility, agency, and empowerment that says, I'm going to command my career and I'm going to be in charge. Yes. And my experience of work, my employee experience, as everyone talks about at conferences these days, and in my employee engagement is actually my experience and my engagement, and I am the one to be the world's leading expert to know what I need in an experience and what I need in an engagement, which is different than her and different than him, and that I'm actually the one to shape that. Yeah. And it's not a top-down, one-size-fits-all program or something that's 4 branches and are you a this, there. I'm none of those, right? Diverse workforces, we all come from different walks of life and need different things.
Well, this ties back to something very, very important for me personally, which is and I'm so glad you and Claude connected, but a long time ago when she and I were just talking on LinkedIn, we'd have a monthly call maybe, she said to me when I was complaining about my job, and you know, I was just like, I can't believe I'm complaining about my job. This is crazy. Like, my family's okay, blah, 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 blah. But I just wasn't satiated, you know?
Sure.
So she goes, you're more in the driver's seat than you think.
Totally.
She's like, just believe me. And then I was just like, what the hell does she mean? And then sometimes that leads to see you later, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes
that's the eject, right? You know?
Yeah, I mean, and my wife's just like, it's time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was like so validated, and I was like, okay, so this goes back to what you were saying about, you know, the kind of cyclical nature of recruiting, where it's just like you're just circling in the same pattern, you know, to the next job for maybe 10% more or whatever. But what if you're not even in the right job now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think shedding light on the individual's capability to completely navigate their own career is probably something that is just not discussed often.
No.
This is crazy to me.
And yet it's so fundamental. And everyone looks at someone else. It's amazing when we talk to people about our software, they think it's like a magic 8 ball. Wait, you're going to tell the employee what to do? I'm like, no, we're going to hold up a mirror so the employee can figure their own shit out, right? Yep. And that's what a coach does. The problem is when 2% of people have coaching and you're out there selling a coaching product, people think it's training, learning, mentoring, advisory things. It's none of those things. It's coaching. A good coach does not give you the answer. Yep. A good coach helps you facilitate your thinking to come up with the answer.